Again, we're here with Ellis Tolbert from 4th and 16 Sports Podcast. Ellis, thank you for joining us, and we're going to transition now to Isaiah Simmons, the other guy that is on the top of the board for the Clemson Tigers, probably the highest ranked guy for the Clemson Tigers this season after his amazing NFL Combine. Let me read this out to you. He is 6'4", 238 pounds. I mean, that is crazy just to think, because here's his results. 4.3940, a 39-inch vertical, and a 132-inch broad jump. So, I mean, he's basically jumping over cars, jumping 3 or 4 parking spots, and then also running faster than a cheetah, all while being a lot heavier than guys who are doing the same at a traditional speed, position like running back or wide receiver. So this is somebody who's classified as a linebacker, even though he wouldn't classify himself as a linebacker. He classifies himself as defense.
Defense.
So what do you think about that? I mean, he's graded as, remember we talked about grades before with T. Higgins. Looks like he's graded as a potential Pro Bowl talent, maybe even a perennial. So multi-year Pro Bowl talent or repeat year Pro Bowl talent. And that seems to be regardless of who takes him. And so his NFL Combine numbers have jumped him from, some people said, oh, he's probably a first-round draft pick, to now, well, no way he gets past 5 or 6. He's going to be up there. We need to trade up for him now. So what were your thoughts of him coming out of the NFL Combine? And obviously he didn't even work out in Clemson's pro day.
Well, I think we all, and anybody that's a Clemson fan, knew that he was going to test off the charts in the Combine. We were just waiting for that. And now he's put the entire world on notice. Everyone knows how athletic that Isaiah Simmons is. And again, if you haven't watched the Clemson football game, you have no idea who this guy is. But if you have watched anything that we've ever had for the last 2-3 years, you understand what kind of talent he is. Now, here's the big deal about Isaiah Simmons. First and foremost, like you said, 6'4", 238 pounds. At some point, you got to think he was probably even faster at one point, because he was smaller when he came into Clemson. They talked about how the guy, you didn't really know where to put him. He just said, hey, you're a track guy that we can put out there and play football, right? So imagine the fact that they made this guy bigger, stronger, but he kept the faster that he came in with. That's a nightmare. And the guy has pretty much earned a doctorate's degree in every position that you could play on the defense. So you're right. He is a defensive player. I just think the fact that when you couple all of those measurements, you're talking about the speed, the height, the power from the long jump, the broad jump, stuff like that. That just shows you what kind of play you're getting, plus the intelligence. It's another thing that people don't understand about both guys. I want to talk about T. Higgins as well. The intelligence, not just football IQ, but intelligence in general. These guys are smart people. So they know how to acclimate. They can come in. They're fast learners. At this point, I don't see a reason why Isaiah couldn't be number one. I know all the talk is Joe Burrow. I know it's probably not going to happen, but the chances, in my opinion, should be much higher than they are for him to be number one. He is that kind of player. He's the type of player that you can plug and play. Obviously, again, we talked about if you need a slot cornerback, he can play it. You need a defensive end, rush in, 3-4 in the NFL is perfect for him. You want to play safety, you want to play middle linebacker. He can do it all. So, again, I think anyone who didn't know who Isaiah Simmons was definitely knows who he is now, and I'm pretty sure every team would love to have him.
Now, I talked with Mark Childress about this, and it'd be great to have you both on at the same time, but I'll tell you what he said. So I asked him, will he go to the Redskins? Now you mentioned, Simmons. Simmons could be, at least in our eyes, he's definitely one of those guys that could be up there as a number 1, number 2 pick. But Redskins right now have a number 2 pick. Every indication is that they can't pass on Chase Young. If you were an NFL coach or an NFL GM, looking at those two players compared, can you just not pass up on Chase Young? Is that just the case? It's not that Isaiah Simmons is not a number 2 pick or a number 1 pick. You just can't pass up on a Chase Young?
Well, you got to look at what's going on right there. Again, this is why I talked about the same with T. Higgins. It depends on the fit. Of course, we know former Carolina Panthers head coach Ron Rivera is now the head coach up in Washington for the Redskins. But look, I would say this. I think that Chase Young is a once in a lifetime defensive end. Okay. He is going to be the guy that can come in and anchor your defensive line. He is going to do that. But in my opinion, if you're looking for a all-time can't miss player defensively, I'm going with Isaiah Simmons. Look, I understand that, again, they're dealing with some stuff. Ryan Kerrigan, some issues with that. They've had a couple of guys retire. They're looking to re-bolster that defensive line to try to give them a chance to play. But if you have a guy that can literally play anywhere in your scheme, I'm saying Isaiah Simmons. I think the reason why they do go with Chase Young, though, is because, again, that's more of a known commodity, whereas Isaiah Simmons, they're going to be trying to figure out where to play him. They'll have to make some moves here and there. You know, oh, well, we're going to have him a slot corner. Well, what are we going to do now that we've taken him away from rushing the quarterback over at this defensive end or linebacker spot? So I don't know that I would say that Chase Young is can't miss in a sense when you're comparing him with Isaiah Simmons. But I will say I think that they are, for what they're trying to do, it makes a little bit more sense for them to go with Chase Young.
Now, the pick right below him, Derek Brown, as some people are saying, Derek Brown's going to go to the Detroit Lions. Now, Brown didn't have as good of a NFL combine as Simmons, who really did have as good of a combine as Simmons. I think he did probably one of the best in the past couple of years as far as expectations. Like you said, Clemson fans already kind of knew that. But Simmons, we know that the Lions need defense help at the defensive line. But would you go for an interior defensive lineman, over someone like Isaiah Simmons? Because I'm seeing some mock drafts saying maybe the Lions go with Isaiah Simmons instead.
Well, here's the thing. We talked about tape and everything and combine. Yeah, Derek Brown, Auburn, didn't really have a very good combine at all. In fact, it was actually pretty awful for what his expectations were. But I will say this, his film doesn't lie. The guy is a force when it comes to when you watch him in the game. Of course, his speed might not look the same in a 40 than it does when he's rushing at your quarterback. It's a totally different game, but I will say he does have that going for him. I will say that the Lions are in a unique position where they have a lot of different things that they need to work on. They have situations going on. They're still trying to potentially ship out Darius Slay, cornerback, some linebacker issues. Of course, that they want to retool that defensive line with Ziggy Ansah being gone. It's going to be very important for them to get a player that's going to be the anchor of the defense and then try to move it forward. If I'm them and knowing what Matt Patricia is doing, that's going to be another thing. Matt Patricia, just like a guy like Ron Rivera for the Redskins, these are defensive coaches. So they're going to probably look for a defensive player first. If it's me, I'm going to go with a guy that can be a perennial Pro Bowler that we're already saying is a perennial Pro Bowler. Also, have you looked at his combine? Have you looked at his tape? In fact, if you go through some of these things, I've looked at, a lot of these players, and I've done this for years, looking at their strengths and weaknesses from the combine. If you look at Isaiah Simmons' weaknesses, they're all pretty much centered around the one thing. Well, where is he going to play, and can he be that position really good? That's it. They're not saying that, the guy can't get off blocks, I can't do this. He can do literally everything. So if it's me and I'm Matt Patricia, I'm taking Isaiah Simmons over Derek Brown, without a doubt.
Oh, big, bold prediction there. That would make him the number 3 overall pick. That'd be amazing. Kind of weird to think that he would go ahead of someone like a Deshaun Watson, as me and Mark were talking about. It's kind of a travesty that Deshaun fell so far. But it's a good thing that he fit in the Texans, and it worked out for him well. I'm seeing some mock drafts talking about possibly extending that Las Vegas Tigers. And he maybe drop a little bit, because other teams like the Panthers, I know a lot of Panthers fans here in the upstate want Isaiah Simmons bad because they just lost Luke Kuechly. But the Panthers have a lot of other things that they got to address too, and so,
that's right.
And so that's a big question and concern. A lot of people think they might be going with a Cam Newton replacement, and that obviously I feel like defensive line and quarterback in college football that I cover, those are the two most important things to address as quickly as possible in your recruiting. And I would assume, and I'm not as big as an NFL guy, but I would assume it kind of falls in the same place. If you don't have a quarterback or a defensive line, what's the need of a hybrid guy can do everything? And I get that. No knock on Isaiah Simmons at all. But you do want him to he will need to fit in the team that he gets picked by, and not just get picked high up just because, you know. So could Isaiah Simmons be a good fit with the Raiders?
No.
Okay.
I put it to you lightly. No, I think the Raiders are on the cusp of being pretty good in a couple of years, and yes, it's going to take a guy like Isaiah Simmons to do it. But for what they've got going on, and I'm not ruling out, because everyone thinks, for Isaiah Simmons to go to certain teams, he has to drop in the draft. First, I think there is zero chance that he drops past the fifth position in the draft. I don't think he's any further than the fifth pick. But I think that there are teams that are going to be, as soon as it gets closer to the date, we only got about, I think, like 6 weeks or something like that. The sooner that we get to that date, you're going to start teams making more changes. And the reason why is because of the free agency. Once you got certain guys being able to be plug and placed at certain places, that'll change up whether someone needs that person or not. So if you're looking at the Raiders, of course, you're looking at a team that just had to get one of their linebackers and probably going to cut him for a good reason. He's always getting suspended for something bad. I'm not even going to say his name. And then you have other guys in the secondary that are really good. So I don't know that I would worry with him on that. When it comes to the Panthers, I think he actually does fit the scheme. In fact, they've had guys be transition kind of guys. Thomas Davis was a safety in college. Shaq was one of those guys that, kind of played safety sometimes, kind of played linebacker. Even Kuechly, he played at all the linebacker spots. We have Will, Middle, and Sam. So I think he'll probably fit in that, but I don't see them going to get someone like that. Like you said, they've got way too many things to work on. I don't think one of those things are going to be a quarterback. They would be crazy to get a quarterback this year, especially when Trevor Lawrence is coming out next season. But, I think right now the teams that I'm looking at are probably the Lions. The Cardinals could potentially come out for him. Maybe I don't know. I'm just saying that there's going to be a lot of interest for him, and there are going to be some trades and moves and things that are going to happen in the free agency that's going to potentially put him up in that top 3, top 4 position.
So we're talking with Ellis Tolbert from the 4th and 16 Sports Podcast, a good friend of ours and been on the show multiple times, and we appreciate you coming in. I've had you for a lot longer than I think you probably signed up for, so I'm going to let you go here soon, but I do have like 15 more questions for you before you go, just before you go.
Let's get with them all.
All right, so as you know, I'm gonna hang on to you as long as I can because I love your insight, man, and I really appreciate it. And if you haven't been following him, please follow him because it's just great Clemson insight, great college football insight, playbook formations. I mean, I'm texting this guy during games asking him, okay, now what do you call that play? Why did they do that? Because he knows exactly what they're doing. I mean, he's kind of like a offensive defensive coordinator all rolled into one, and likes to talk about it too, and can convey in layman's terms what's going on. So I love Ellis, and I appreciate you coming on, man. But first couple of questions here. So quick rundown. Does Isaiah Simmons go before or after Tua?
Well, okay. First, thanks for all the kind words. I appreciate you. Thanks for having me on. I love it. It's a blast coming on with you guys. You and Alan, you guys are amazing. Thanks for all that you do. And we need more coming from the Morgan Thomas Show. So hopefully 2020 will be a big year if we have sports in the first place. If we're not just completely wiped out from the coronavirus. I know that's a big, bad word now. But again, thank you so much for having me on. Does Isaiah go before Tua? Absolutely. There is more of a need for Isaiah Simmons and his skill set, what you can use right now, whereas Tua could potentially be a project. He's not going to go anywhere and start immediately. First and foremost, he's coming off of a hip injury, a catastrophic hip injury, by the way. And then also, you just don't have a whole lot of film on it. If you take this in consideration, he had one real game where he actually came in and did some damage. It was a national championship game in the second half in 2017. He had an entire season in 2018 where he was still he looked really good. They looked like juggernauts, but then he kind of got exposed a little bit against the better teams that he played, and ultimately against Clemson in an embarrassment. And then 2019, he was injured halfway into the season, was unable to continue going on. So there's a lot of question marks with a guy like Tua, not a lot of question marks with Isaiah Simmons other than where do we put him and how many sacks is he going to have in this game?
And going back to T. Higgins, the other guy we were talking about earlier, does he, and I'm hearing this from a lot of mock drafts right now, does another Clemson player jump T. Higgins, maybe like an A.J. Terrell?
Possibly. I'll leave that with it possibly. And the reason why is that A.J. Terrell, again, is one of those guys that has potential to be a starter within the first or second year. His combine really helped him out. And, of course, a lot of people wanted to ding A.J. Terrell, especially at the national championship game because, he didn't have the greatest showing. But, he actually ended up going against the Biletnikoff winner, by the way. There's a lot of guys. Remember how they said the ACC cornerbacks aren't that good? Well, there's a lot of guys that he went up against A.J. Terrell and lost. But this guy was really good, and there's a lot of guys that went up against him and lost as well. So I think with his combine ability, with his size, they love tall, big, long, rangy cornerbacks. He's 6'1", bordering 6'2". He's got long arms. He run that 4.3 40. I mean, it's one of those deals where he could potentially go ahead of him. But I think with T, you might get a little bit more instant action. We saw this happen last year. Trayvon Mullen goes, but he wasn't really looked at as an immediate starter. He did play a lot later on. He got injured. But I think that's going to be kind of the similar trajectory with a guy like A.J. Terrell. At first, you're going to be going up against guys. Depends on where he goes. You can potentially going against guys like OBJ or DeAndre Hopkins, unfortunately. Uh-oh. And there's a lot of guys that you could be going up against. But for a guy like T, you could probably plug him in and play him and get a lot more out of him immediately. So I'm going to say possibly. There's a possible chance that can happen.
All right, yeah, because I'm seeing it. It depends on who you click on, really. If you type in mock draft, you get a lot of T. Higgins is maybe 26th or higher. And then you get sometimes you don't get T. Higgins in the first round, but you'll get A.J. Terrell in the first round. So it's been kind of interesting to see that. But again, the Isaiah Simmons is a definite one, especially after that monster combine that he had. I'd love to see where he goes. Wouldn't mind to see him play close in the Panthers, but that's not really close to his hometown. He's a Kansas City guy, and he mentioned at the combine that he would love to play for Kansas City because that's his childhood team. But he and T. Higgins both said, and they've been raised right by Dabo Swinney and company. They said, hey, we're going to do our best no matter what jersey we put on. And we want to help the team out. And I think that's what's so great about Clemson is that it's not about, the superstars being the best individually. When they have them, don't get me wrong, but it's about what can they do to help the team. Again, going back to Isaiah Simmons, I mean, Simmons, I don't know if you listened to his interview at the Combine, but he said that he didn't even know where Clemson or what Clemson was coming out of high school. And that, when it comes to recruiting, and you and I follow recruiting a lot, once you get the first offer, and his brother went to Kansas and he got the first offer from Kansas, I believe. He said once he got that first offer, then, all the other teams said, uh-oh, who is this guy? So it's kind of like a domino effect. You get one offer and then it helps you. And I think that's great for the high school guys. And he said that Brent Venables was that close to second or third offer after Kansas. And that he didn't know anything about Clemson, but he went and met Dabo Swinney and realized that they have a winning culture, or at least at that point had a winning culture. We're winning 10-win seasons multiple times. And he said, man, maybe this is a team I need to take a look at further. And then one of the biggest things was what we were talking about earlier of, will coaches be okay with his, jack of all trades style, right? Well, Brent Venables was one of those guys that was okay with that. And that's why he decided, I'm going to go to Clemson. So best case, worst case scenario for Isaiah Simmons.
Well, I was actually, let's go back to you really quick. I was thinking about this. Now, the Texans are under contract to try to figure out something going on. They're going to be moving some things around, right? But you already have Deshaun Watson. You already have a guy like DeAndre Hopkins, probably the best receiver in the NFL, especially when the stats back that up. But he's been publicly crying out to see if they can get Sammy Watkins to come on down to the Texans. Now, what happens if you get Sammy Watkins, DeAndre Hopkins, you draft a T. Higgins, and then later on you make a trade for Isaiah Simmons and then draft a guy like Travis Etienne in 2021? Hey, look, that might be the Super Bowl winning team for the next 10 years. So that's just amazing.
I don't know. I don't know
like
what you just did there, but it feels like something that you and I would do at Madden.
That's exactly what I would do.
It sounds like something that I used to do as a kid, where I would get. But the funny thing is that when we were in high school, when we were in middle school, and we were playing Madden in the 2Ks, which, by the way, 2K is coming back out, I hear.
Yes.
And I'm excited for that because I love 2K stuff. But when we were back then, it was you didn't have like 5 or 6 Clemson guys to pick from. You could not fill a full team of Clemson players, so you had to kind of decide. Okay, am I going to do Clemson plus ACC players? Am I going to do maybe am I going to be okay with some Southern California players? Because it used to be, and I kind of said this to Mark Childress, it used to be where. Who would you have? Thomas Austin, maybe, or like a Tyler Gresham would be. He only played 1 year, and you might. I remember like maybe have a last year Chester McLaughlin or something, like an older school guy. But it really wasn't a ton. I mean, outside of offensive linemen and defensive linemen, you didn't have a lot of skill position guys out there. You definitely didn't have any quarterbacks out there.
No. And that's what makes this whole draft, this whole conversation right now, talking about a guy like T. Higgins and Isaiah Simmons being so high up in the draft, especially coming off of last year. We had 3 guys in the first round, and you're talking about many more in the second and third. And, Hunter Renfrow being one of the best receivers in the NFL this past season, despite being where he's drafted. Clemson's really taken over, so this is why it's super exciting. But, yeah, I think that anybody that gets any Clemson player, not only are you getting a talented player, but you're going to get a player that has heart. They're intelligent. They have a winning culture, good family. They're not going to be in all kind of crazy trouble. When's the last time you heard of a Clemson player being in some kind of crazy trouble? I just think that, and that's not even biased. That's just honestly, Clemson comes up from a winning culture. So going back to the question, I said all of that to say this. I say the best case scenario for Isaiah Simmons is he finds a team that is really going to make the right moves, roster-wise and everything. He's going to get in and contribute, and they're going to be a winning program. They're going to be a winning organization. And we could potentially see him in the Pro Bowl in his first year. Worst case scenario, he gets to a team that's completely defunct, kind of like his college scenario where we talked about guys don't know where to put him. He gets the wrong head coach and wrong defensive coordinator, and they don't know where to put him. They're just doing whatever. He could have somewhat of a disappointing season. I think his play speaks for itself. So he's going to be near the ball all the time, but maybe he won't be on that team that's going to be very successful. I'm just hoping that whoever gets him understands that you have a guy that you can put literally anywhere, and he's going to make some stuff. And going back to talking about it, Olathe, Kansas is a pretty small place. I've actually been through there once. It's a pretty small place, but the fact that it was like a thing that was meant to be a guy that was considered skinny and fast, not really football big or whatever. And, people trying to find out where to put him because he's so talented, but you don't know how to really gauge him. And you find a guy that played at Kansas State, a guy from Kansas who happens to be the best defensive coordinator in college football, and Brent Venables comes to your place and says, "Hey, do you want to play for me?" "Sure, coach, I'll play." "Where do you want me to play?" Anywhere. And we saw that. I mean, pretty much this defense this year was anchored on the fact that you could put Isaiah Simmons anywhere. So I think, again, I don't really think there's any terrible scenario for him individually. I think he's going to shine wherever he goes. But I do think there's a potential that he goes to a team that's just disorganized. We know we are talking about the NFL here. So there's a lot of weird stuff that goes on. Hopefully he finds the right team.
Well, again, Ellis, I appreciate it. Again, let our fans know. Man, this has been a great conversation. I knew it was going to be great, and if we ever start a second or third hour on the Morgan Thomas show, I'm just gonna have to make you permanent, man, because you just got so
Let's do
much
it.
going on. But let me ask you this: tell our fans again one more time before you get out of here, how to find you, how to follow you, and how to keep up with you.
Okay. So again, Fourth and 16 Sports live show. We talk college football wall to wall. We don't really talk much else. We just do a lot of college football talk. You can find us every Tuesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, for those who will be in that time zone. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on Facebook Live, Twitter, Periscope. Also, if you just want to reach out to me and talk football in general, I'm on Twitter at @eTolbert That's ETOLBERT Speaks. We'll go on there and have a really good time. And again, this has been a pleasure to talk with you, man. Thank you so much for having me on. Good luck to the guys in the draft. I'm hoping that they all go. I wish they could go 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Every guy from Clemson, but where, like I said, wherever they go, they're going to shine. So again, thanks for that, and everyone, appreciate you for listening to me just talk out of my head.
All right, thanks again, man, and I appreciate it.